Hi, I'm Nancy Hart. I'm a senior staff attorney at the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, which is a national organization based in Reno, Nevada. And welcome, and thank you all for being here. We are going to have some introductory remarks by the city attorney, and then we'll have a brief overview of the project before we get into the rest of the day. The media will be here for that first introduction and the overview of the project, and then they will be departing during the discussion and activities of the day. But welcome, and we'll have Mr. Klein come up. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. How y'all doing? Good morning so far? Good, great. I'm Zach Klein. I'm the Columbus City Attorney, and certainly want to welcome everyone for coming today and what is an important and really valuable partnership when you look around the room of exactly who's here and the opportunities we have to solve a significant problem in our community, and that's gun violence and its intersection with domestic violence. Before we get started, I want to recognize Judge Peebles is in the room. Thank you so much, Judge Peebles, for being here. I also saw Judge Brown. I don't know if he stepped out, but Judge Brown was here as well. I want to thank our community partners, who I think everyone's going to get acclimated with, so I won't read the entire list. But thank you for being here. I know that for a whole day seminar to get away, to be part of this learning process, this collaborative effort to change people's lives, to make our community safer is invaluable. And so I'm grateful for everyone's support. We're also grateful that you're here today as we launch a federal grant-assisted program that is designed to help communities identify and overcome challenges in implementing domestic violence-related gun laws and work to prevent intimate partner homicide. This is a project that my office, including Joe Gibson and Bridget DeCrane, and working with the Department of Justice and many partners, were able to land. And we are one of just a few cities that are going to receive this technical assistance grant, so we're very fortunate to have the expertise of everyone in this room. The Domestic Violence Homicide Prevention Firearms Technical Assistance Project, administered through the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges and the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Violence Against Women, was awarded to the City of Columbus earlier this year. The grant program helps design and implement community-specific strategies to disarm abusers by providing access to experts, consultants, and DOJ staff, intensive training, technical assistance, and a framework for enhanced interagency collaboration and cooperation. This is particularly helpful, I think, to prosecutors and law enforcement. There's no doubt that the most dangerous runs police officers go on are domestic violence runs, and unfortunately in this courtroom right now, or in this building right now, there's a trial going on for the murder of 2 Westerville police officers that were engaged in a domestic violence run. We have our domestic violence and stalking unit led by Mary Lynn Caswell. Some of the toughest cases we prosecute because of witnesses and the sensitivity of family matters and issues. That domestic violence can be tough. Not to mention the fact in the city of Columbus, we run up against certain state laws that prevent us from exercising what we believe are important laws that need to be enacted in order to keep our community safe. We were able, although we are being sued, we were able to pass a misdemeanor weapons under disability law that has withstood challenges despite being sued on it, and we're confident that we are going to be ultimately prevail in the long run. Where the City of Columbus has stepped in to create a disability ordinance for those who have a federal disability like domestic violence from owning a gun and possessing a gun, but where state law in Ohio actually allows it. So being able to step into that space to hold domestic violence abusers accountable, I think, is really important in how we disarm those abusers, how we work with law enforcement, and we work with community advocates to make sure our first responders, the victims, their family members, the children are safe, is an important, critical step for community safety. FTAP is a national project focused on improving public safety and public health in Columbus and 6 other sites around the country. And through these site-based initiatives, communities will implement policies, protocols, and promising practices to prevent abusers from having unlawful access to firearms in domestic violence cases. Just to mention again, just the great work here that all of our partners in the room, and just collectively, I'm confident that we're going to make a difference, and I'm grateful for everyone's day and time. And thank you to the FTAP team for selecting Columbus. That is, I think, speaks volumes to the collaboration that we have between the City Attorney's Office, between the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, between Columbus Division of Police and the Sheriff's Office, and all of the other community partners in this room to make a difference. So at that, I'll step away, but thank you so much for the partnership and participation, and we're looking forward for a very productive day and how we can make a difference and improve public safety in our community. Thank you.
Just like to add my thanks for everybody taking the day to be here. It is hopefully won't feel like a long day, but it is a full day. And we are really pleased with the broad representation from the community that we see here, and that we know is in the room. We're going to do some introductions after I do a brief overview of the project. But I first want to say a couple of things about today. I want to encourage you all to participate. We're going to be drawing drawing on our experiences, but we're going to be making maps which are going to help identify the challenges in the existing civil and criminal processes here in Columbus relating to domestic violence and firearms. And this is just an early step in the planning process for the project to determine what are the priorities for the project and what are the specific work plans for the project. So we're not going to get into a lot of details or looking at solutions. We're really trying to identify the challenges today. That's the focus of today. And you may end up having a lot of questions as you go through the mapping process at your tables or as a result of the mapping. And that's what we would expect. So we fully expect that you might leave the room at the end of the day with more questions than you came with, and that's might be uncomfortable, but that's exactly where we want people to be, so not to be surprised by that. The Firearms Technical Assistance Project, which we are fondly calling the FTAP, has a number of objectives, but essentially it is to provide intensive technical assistance to half a dozen communities around the country who are working to improve their response to firearms in domestic violence cases, both civil and criminal. We hope to obtain and disseminate information about effective strategies and lessons learned, and those will be shared not only with the 6 sites that we are working with, but also with other communities who are struggling with this work now and down the road. We're working to identify approaches that will protect victims, children, and others in the community while also promoting victim autonomy in the process and safeguarding offenders' due process rights in the process. We'll hear a little bit more about those 2 sort of centerpieces when I go on. As was mentioned, this project will facilitate a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring, both between the sites that we've selected and perhaps with another community who has done something that is of interest to Columbus, because we want to share ideas and problem solve between jurisdictions, because we find that is helpful. The structure of the project is, it says 5 to 7, but we have 6 sites right now. We are still in the process of identifying a 7th one, a second tribal site, so that we'll have a total of 2 tribal sites and 5 non-tribal sites. But our goal has been to have broad diversity in the sites, both from a geographic standpoint, demographic standpoint, from a legal framework standpoint. We have some jurisdictions who have very strong laws around this, and then we have other jurisdictions that have what you wouldn't say were particularly strong laws, but we have seen effective work done in both all range of jurisdictions. And what we want to be able to communicate at the end of the project is it doesn't really matter where you are as far as your legal authority or that you can take steps to implement firearms restrictions in domestic violence cases, even if you're operating off of a catch-all phrase in the statute, for example. Again, we're focusing on both civil and criminal systems, although some of the sites are choosing to focus on one more than another, but the project is open to working on both in all of the jurisdictions. And we are incorporating the voice, there's a focus on, or a value on incorporating the voices and needs of traditionally underserved communities. We know that if we reach into those communities and are serving and identifying and serving the needs there, that there is a much better chance that we're addressing the needs of the whole community. And again, the project involves intensive TA. As Mr. Klein mentioned, this is a technical assistance grant. Doesn't have any funding that came with it. What you're getting is you're getting the expertise from around the country of people who are experts who have worked in this area, and working with your local team to bring those strategies and ideas together. But there is some limited funding for travel. If, for example, the city of Columbus went to visit another site to learn something about how they did their work, that would be funded by the project. And I should mention that the funding comes from the Office on Violence Against Women, to whom we are very grateful, and they are a cooperative partner on this project. This just kind of reiterates what you get from the technical assistance team, which we call the TA team. This intensive ongoing TA by a dedicated team. We are all here today, but in addition to that, we have many national partners, technical assistance providers around the country, who I'll identify shortly, and we'll be able to draw on their expertise and availability. They may even come here, but they will be participating as well as needed. And then we'll have this peer-to-peer consultation and mentoring with a cross-fertilization of ideas as that happens. The other project sites, or the 6 project sites, are Birmingham, Alabama, Brooklyn, New York, Columbus, Muskogee Creek Nation outside of Tulsa in Oklahoma, Spokane, Washington, and the state of Vermont. It's a statewide project in Vermont. So you can see that we have that diversity there in terms of a lot of things. The partners on this project include the Office on Violence Against Women and, of course, the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. But in addition to those, we are working closely with Equitas, the Prosecutor's Resource on Violence Against Women, the Center for Court Innovation, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National Center on Protection Orders and Full Faith and Credit, the National Center for State Courts, the National Domestic Violence and Firearms Resource Center, and the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. So a real wealth of TA providers from around the country who have, many of whom, we also have some individuals, some judges, some a defense attorney, some people who have particular expertise in their jurisdiction who are individual partners with us. So the national partners provide the personnel for the technical assistance teams, but some are part of the TA teams, and you'll meet us today. And then some will be called upon to work with the sites as issues emerge. Like if something makes sense for Equitas to be working with, we would draw on Equitas's individual folks there or materials that they provide. The site TA team is composed of one person, actually a couple people from the NCJ, FCJ. That's myself and Michelle Robinson, who I believe is in the back. Oh, she was signing in people at the front. And then also consultant for the council, Darren Mitchell, who will be presenting it shortly, and Dave Keck, who is from the National Center on Firearms and Domestic Violence. As well as we all have each site has an OVW liaison, and for Columbus it is Brenda Outerman, who is sitting at the back. And so we select these teams according to some of the anticipated needs. I mean, there was some early assessment done by each of the sites. Today is a day when you're going to dive a little deeper and try to get a little deeper into the challenges. But as a part of applying for the project, you had to articulate some of the issues that were in the city in order to. So your TA team was assigned with all that in mind. Then you have a local site management team. And that is anywhere from 5 to 12 representatives from key stakeholder agencies and organizations, including the lead project organization, which was the city attorney's office in this case. And they're responsible for the overall project management. We have regular calls with that the TA team, and the site management team have regular monthly calls and other intermittent calls to discuss what's going on. And then the fourth key partner is the larger collaborative group, and I would say that this room of people represents that group. It's the larger collaborative stakeholder group in the community who is involved in this work or could be involved in this work or has a perspective on what needs to be done with this work that is really critical to being able to move forward and address the most critical issues. The Columbus management team is, I think, our largest management team, so barely fit on one slide. I will leave it up there for a moment so you guys can read. I don't think I need to read through everybody, but you can see that we have some really great representation from different agencies, offices, as well as community-based organizations that are involved in working with victims, so we have a really great cross-section of folks just on the management team. So what we've learned from, the National Council has been doing, and other technical assistance partners have been doing work around firearms for a good 20, 25 years. It's ebbed and flowed, but you'll hear a little bit more, but the federal law passed back in 1995, so there have been laws to work with for many years. And through that technical assistance work over the years, some themes have emerged. The high importance of leadership, and that's what we are recognizing in seeing in these projects around the country and these sites that we've selected, is that you have to have leadership, because without leadership you really can't move forward. And another super critical element of that is collaboration, and collaboration between stakeholders. This is work that requires, it's not just one discipline, one part of the system that needs to do its job. It's very much a collaborative effort. So we also believe in the importance of assessing where you are and mapping what your challenges are, and that's where we are today. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a value on recognizing and trying to maximize victim voice in the process, victim autonomy in the process. And sometimes that gets forgotten in the zeal to put in new procedures and create new forms, and you might hear us asking with regularity, how does the victim fare in all of this? And similarly, we have a strong value on protecting due process rights of those that are adverse parties, accused. And finally, doing what we can to make our strategies be culturally sensitive and to develop culturally specific practices. Our approach has predominantly been to focus on this as a public health and safety issue. We'll do a little bit of discussion around a shared purpose later this morning, and we'll have a further discussion about that. We, again, also focus on collaboration, victim autonomy, defendants' rights, respondents' rights, and the mapping. So we have a fairly systematic approach. I'm going to put up a grid that we've used in other presentations, which just illustrates that we really believe that you have to start at the beginning and go all the way to the end in order to evaluate where along that time frame are there barriers, are there obstacles to access, are there things that don't happen that should happen, are there forms that don't get used. So it's just an illustration. You don't really need to memorize this. And then the timeline for this project, we are in the planning phase. It's a little hard to see that blue, but between the summer, the sites were selected in early May, notified in early May, and so during the summer and early fall, there's been some pre-assessment work done, but this is an important part of the assessment and planning, and that'll go into the beginning of next year. And then we're planning an all-sites meeting towards the end of January, where all the sites will come together. And sometime in the winter/spring, you will have a work plan developed that will sort of be the roadmap for your work for the next couple of years. So the implementation phase will be throughout the next year and the following year. So are there any questions? That's sort of a broad overview of the project. Any questions about the project itself? All right, thank you.